What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be reviewing Bucky Brooks' brand new 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. It is not predictive. It is fully transparent. It is backed up by my all 22 opinion that is posted over on X. You guys get to see that for free. Of course, if you want to support the show, feel free to go and use code HAILMARY when you sign up for UnderDog Fantasy. They're going to be having some 40 times popping up super soon for you guys to use, which if you guys do sign up, using the code HAILMARY, you get up to $1,000 in bonus credits. Super excited for that, but they sent me $60. I'm going to be using it, so feel free if you do end up going over there, being able to support the show that way. Feel free to tag me in that as well on X. Let's get into this. Let's have a great time. We are continuing to burn and churn through all of the team-based mock drafts before free agency. Super excited for that. Let's get into this, though. Starting out with the number 1 pick, we got Abdul Carter. Now that Harold Landry has just been given permission to seek a trade, it kind of feels like this is the lock. So it makes sense right there. Also, the notion around the league is that Cam Ward is going to be a Cleveland Brown. Pretty much Adam Schefter ended up talking about it. He basically was like, yeah, pretty much the easiest thing to shoe in is now that Cleveland is looking to go after a quarterback there at 2, which, I mean, based on their situation, based on Stefanski, like where he's at in his career in terms of potentially on the hot seat, we could definitely see that being a big factor there. At number 3, you got the Giants going Shedeur Sanders. It's going to be very intriguing to see if New York wants to exercise a Matt Stafford trade. Feel free to drop in the comment section what you think that trade should be. Based on what I've heard from a lot of people, it's going to be a 2026 1 and then maybe a day 2 pick this year. And that's basically to get the Rams some extra draft capital this year, but also build them up for the future, because number 3 is certainly not on the board. Because if the Giants end up doing that, of course, this won't be Shedeur. This would end up being probably Travis. So curious to see how that ends up playing out. At number 4, we got the Patriots going Will Campbell at number 4. Like, everybody is saying Will Campbell at number 4. I don't know why that seems to be like the consensus. Will Campbell is a good player, a very solid player, but he does have issues. Like, it is fair. It's like talking about him as plug and play. Let's take our foot off the gas pedal, so to speak. This ain't no Joe Alt. Like, we have to see within the next day or two if Will Campbell has somehow like 33.5 plus inch arms. Like, this is going to be the pick, right? Solid movement skills. I mean, he has those high level games versus South Carolina. I honestly thought he did a great job, even though he graded poorly. Like, I feel like his mistakes were correctable, but I did see as the year progressed that I did not see the confidence that I had in Will Campbell beforehand. So I'd be curious to see what happens there, especially with Travis on the board. It would be hard to see someone like Mike Vrabel pass on Will Campbell. But speaking of Trav, he ends up slipping to 5 and going to the Jaguars here. They need a number 1 corner. They could use him as a weapon as well from time to time. So I personally think this would be extremely exciting and a great way to start off Liam Cohen's his career, his career as a head coach. But Las Vegas Raiders go Tetairoa McMillan at number 6. I've heard a lot of people talking about Tetairoa literally slipping like to the mid to back end of the first, which is, again, I mean, that's where I have him on my board, but I thought that I was like much lower than most people on Tet, which I've comped him to a giraffe with hands, so, take that as you will. But Tetairoa has done a great job improving even in a technically inferior statistic year. But the Vegas Raiders could use a true number 1. Tetairoa is not a bad option. At number 7, you got the Jets going Mykel Williams. I don't think that it would make very much sense to go after Mykel. I think there's definitely a role that you can end up putting edge rusher in for the Jets and get something out of it. But when you're looking at return on investment, like, yeah, he has the freaky tools, but I mean, you have McDonald, you have Johnson. I mean, it's just, I don't see the emphasis on edge the way that you could defensive interior, the way that you could at cornerback. So I do think that there's a little bit of a gap in terms of where I love Mykel, but it's like, again, it seems very intriguing that he would go there at 7 over someone like Mason Graham, who does fall to number 8, which would be a great pick for the Panthers. I've even traded up for Mason Graham in the past, but really, really solid move there for Carolina. If he slips there, that's a dream come true. Jalen Walker goes to the Saints at number 9. I would not be a fan of this all that much. Personally, I don't like Staley could use him as that outside linebacker edge rusher, but I personally want Jalen Walker purely in that off-ball role used as a weapon from time to time, and I just don't think Brandon Staley would use him correctly. That's my hot take there. I'd rather have Kellen Moore go after someone like Tyler Warren and then end up enjoying the benefits from that than going after Jalen, but I do understand for those of y'all who are looking at this optimistically, maybe Brandon Staley does get his head and ass wired together because he's a good DC. Jalen Walker could end up being used properly, but I would say I just don't know if this system would use him the way that I would want him to. At number 10, you got the Bears going Kelvin Banks. I like the fact that it's listed as a tackle and guard hybrid. I'm just not a big guy for Kelvin Banks. I don't like his foot speed, and he's probably going to be 6'4" or even sub 6'4", which is going to be an issue to a lot of people in the league because you got to, like, leverage is a legit thing, and if you're standing straight up and the other defender is completely out leveraging you in terms of being like bent and then full forward, but you could end up running into some issues there. So I'm not a huge Kelvin Banks guy. You guys know this. I have a tackle video out that explains it, but regardless, offensive line for the Bears is not a bad idea. At number 11, you got the Niners going Mike Green. He actually ended up coming out, and so now it's public information. He ended up having a sexual assault claim put on him in high school, ended up not being found guilty of that. You guys can feel free to read the note from himself, but ended up having another allegation at University of Virginia, which he said he knows the truth. It wasn't true. And so the thing is, what I knew is that at University of Virginia, they understood what was happening in high school and ended up having a no tolerance policy. The no tolerance policy ended up kicking in when there was a claim. And so it is possible, and I'm praying to God that it is the case, that it was just a false claim for sexual assault, and that Mike Green is, I hope the guy didn't do either of it. And based on where everybody's head is at in terms of, all these mock drafters are kicking James Pierce down the board, which I'll talk about him, at the end of this, because I don't think he was even in this mock draft, or maybe he's at 32 or something. But, for a lot of guys who are moving up and down, it's like teams have already expressed their concern. With Mike Green, it looks like the concerns are kind of subdued. So I could see it happening. The Niners just met with Mike Green as well as James Pierce Jr. So I'm excited to see how that ends up working out. And I hope to God, again, that, all this is behind us. And I pray to God that, unfortunately, the world that we live in, that maybe it was just a couple of false claims. So fingers crossed about that. Mike Green, the talent is ridiculous, but now that he ended up making it public, I know I've been talking about the sources that I've heard. And again, I didn't want to confirm anything because I didn't have direct information. I just had people who were very into the situation, and what they said was correct. Cowboys then go Armand Membu at number 12 to replace Zach Martin. Could potentially even replace that right tackle spot as well. Again, I think that it's not a bad move. When you look at the archetype of player that you guys have been drafting on the offensive line, Membu doesn't really model Cooper Beebe's physical profile. He's kind of closer to Tyler Guyton. So you'd be drafting him as a tackle. I don't think this fits the vision for Schottenheimer as a guard, which is perfectly fine because Terrence Steele, in my opinion, is not the future. So it wouldn't be a horrible pick at all. I never will complain about a team investing in their offensive line. So continuing on, number 13, Dolphins go Tyler Booker. Tyler Booker's more of a Cowboys pick, in my opinion, than Armand Membu if you have the vision for a guard. But I just don't think, Greer would end up taking a guard in the first. It's just not up his alley. He doesn't value it. He should, but he doesn't. So I think that, for realism's sake, not the best idea. But if they do it, awesome. I think that's an amazing move. Colts then go Tyler Warren at 14. If he's there, that's the run-in pick. I mean, it's incredible. Obviously, they had the option of Will Johnson there. I do think the Colts, especially in this corner class, this is a hot take, but they'll be better off with Tyler Warren and then a corner sometime else than Will Johnson and a tight end sometime else. And that's not to crap on the tight end class. I'm just saying that the Colts, I feel, are not as desperate as what people believe to fix that corner room. Then you got Will Johnson going to the Falcons. I mean, he's been someone who's been falling quite a bit. I don't know why. I feel like people are genuinely so concerned with this speed, but randomly last year, Kamari Lassiter clocked in a 4.68, which there was a big range. I don't know why someone can't just have a like a 60 frames per second and like 4K camera that is going, and then you could basically just split it down by the second, or like or maybe even like 120 frames per second, so you could end up like, pinpointing when he starts versus when he finishes. I really don't understand why it's like so mind-boggling at pro days to be able to use like a camera, but it is what it is. But with Will Johnson, I mean, like the eye test you see, especially in 2023, which I'm not a big fan of going back to 2023 or year before. Like, I'm very like, who are you now? But Will Johnson looked like he was playing hurt this entire year, which even if he ended up dropping 7 overall points for his injury, he still would be the number 1 player in the class. Hot take. So I think Will Johnson's the best player. Whoever takes him is going to get an absolute super stud. Cardinals then go Walter Nolan at 16. Could definitely see it. It's a punchy defensive interior and will give almost like a Milt presence there for Gannon. So I'd be excited to see how that would end up working out. The Bengals then go Kenneth Grant at 17. A lot of people love KG, and KG is a great player. Unbelievable ceiling. I mean, the floor there, I think that he's still learning how to use his body, but he's a crazy athlete, and some of the moves he makes is awesome. So, I mean, I could definitely see somebody like Al Golden finding value on the defensive interior after he just had Riley Mills, as well as Howard Cross be primarily the strength of his defense. So, strength of the defensive front. So I think that you can end up continuing to develop that with Kenneth Grant. Pair him back up, of course, with Chris Jenkins Jr., and you call it a day. Seahawks go Josh Simmons at 18. He could play guard and tackle, and he's played right tackle before. I think that's actually not a bad fit. People are going to complain about it. I think it's pretty damn solid. And you're betting on the medicals to be positive, which apparently it looks like it should be, but we'll see. Buccaneers go Emeka Egbuka at 19. Replacing Chris Godwin, not a bad idea, but Emeka did struggle with health the year before, and the Buccaneers seem to be a team that really values like consistency of health. I would have some concerns over whether they'd value Emeka Egbuka to that degree, but if he's healthy, good pick. Broncos go Ashton Genty. I can't see him slipping this far. I honestly think there's a higher chance of Amari and Hampton, and speaking of Amari and Hampton and Genty, I think there's a higher chance of them going in the top 12 than they are slipping to 20. So I'm just going to put it that way. Like Ashton Genty slipping here is just like so unlikely. Like he's a freak back. There's so many nickel packages now that running is arguably easier now than ever. And so it's just, they're more valuable weapons now than ever as well. But great pickup by the Broncos. And honestly, this is slowly becoming my favorite pick for the Steelers. Amari Hampton is my number 6 player on my board. And that includes positional value. I think that just the way he grew this year in terms of like his own internal processing and being able to step up in moments like losing your top end quarterback, losing a lot of firepower on offense. It's so commendable that it's just, I mean, again, I had him as RB16 coming to the year. He's my RB1 now. Like, I love him to death. It's an easy top 2. And for those of you who want to say it's not, I mean, I will just say I felt like I was being a little extreme by saying that. And then I hear guys like Todd McShay literally saying it's a clear top 2. And people are in the NFL, he's saying he's talking to people in the NFL and they're debating this RB1 as well, saying, is it a clear RB1 or is this legitimately a competition because there's a clear RB1 and RB2? But the question is the order, not necessarily the names themselves. So I think the Steelers getting Amari Hampton might be the best pick that we can make. Like, unless we get Will Johnson to slip to this point, I don't think there's a better one. So that's my hot take right there. I think we need, especially in Arthur Smith offense, to be run heavy. And Amari Hampton, I think he's going to be a top 5 to 10 running back in the NFL. At number 22, we got the Chargers going Colston Loveland. Makes sense. Good pick. I mean, how many times have we talked about it? At this point, we should probably move on. Shedeur Sanders goes to the Packers at 23. They just fired the defensive line coach. For Jeff Hafley, I personally wouldn't see him as somebody that needs to go after Shamar, but I do think that corner, especially with all the guys who are on the board like Ben Morrison, I'd prefer to go that route than Shamar Stewart. At number 24, you have the Vikings going Jahdae Barron. If you end up bringing back Byron Murphy, which if I'm not mistaken, probably going to, then there's no reason to take Jahdae Barron. But if you do lose Byron Murphy, this is an amazing, perfect fit. So That's the real question right there. Do you bring him back? And obviously, that will be answered in a couple weeks. At number 25, we got the Texans going Luther Burden at 25. Luther Burden's a good player. I am personally lower on him than pretty much anybody that I know, but I think that he is solid. I think the Texans need receiving help, and I don't think that Luther Burden's a bad option there at 25. At 26, the Rams go Josh Connerly. I am like perfectly fine with this one. We'll see if the Rams want to bring back Alaric Jackson, but if they don't, I think Josh Connerly is an amazing building piece for the future. Matt Stafford could be gone, but Josh Connerly will need a little bit of time to develop, and I think that's fine. Ravens go to Malachi Starks at 27. They run a lot of 3 safety sets. I think that defensive back is an underrated position for them, and they take a big faller here in Starks and end up getting themselves a damn good player. Lions then go Donovan Jackson at 28. I personally think they don't need to focus on interior offensive line this much, but you can't complain about getting an upgrade there. I have a lot of faith in Christian Mahogany personally, and I do think that you can end up taking some swings a little bit later in this draft rather than here in the first. At number 29, the Commanders go Matt Golden. Really good receiver. You end up taking him at 29, which is solid value for Matt Golden as well. He's a boundary receiver, 190, 195, and he's one of the best route runners in the class, so I think that would be great for Jaden. At number 30, you got the Bills going Donovan Ezeraku. Ezeraku is a really good player, obviously up in Boston College, used to the cold, good arm length, good power. Doesn't necessarily match the Von Miller athleticism, so I would think that they'd probably try to go after someone like James Pierce and just pray to God that the mental concerns are kind of in check. But for Ezeraku, I mean, if they end up taking him, it's going to be a little early, but it's perfectly reasonable. I think Braden Swinson would be a better target than Ezeraku, but both those guys don't have the same top end athleticism that maybe a Mike Green would. Then we have, I know Mike Green's gone, but I'm just saying, for example, a high athletic player like that, James Pierce, etc. But the Chiefs then go Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon's a really good player. I'm not going to complain about this. He is a very solid player. I really liked him even back when he was at Michigan State, which was a hot second ago. But getting some extra talent with Chris Jones, I would say there might be some bigger priorities, especially with the guys on the board. But it's certainly a player that should be in the consideration for the late first. And then the Eagles, there we go. James Pierce, amazing pick. Amazing pick for Vic Fangio's system. Someone who can play stand-up, play in some coverage as well. And he is a very powerful player for being 245. But the problem with James Pierce is that a lot of people are concerned with his mentality. For me, I got to experience being on the same team as Matt Corral and understanding how, I mean, in no disrespect to Matt Corral, but we saw what happens in the NFL when you see this mental spiral. Like, I used to see multiple interception games where Matt couldn't get himself out of his own head. I hear from, it's been now 3 different individuals that have reached out to me privately talking about James Pierce's mentality and how, whether he's like a loony or just someone who's extremely hard to coach or someone who is just very unpleasant and just out there. I've heard a lot of it, which breaks my heart. He was literally my number 2 player in the class, and to the point where I had to put Abdul Carter as a DPR grade above James Pierce, where James Pierce graded as an edge better than him. But for James Pierce, I do have based on how everybody else is reacting, it looks like these concerns are very legitimate. And that's what sucks, because you watch a player, you fall in love with them, and then it's something that you can never tell. And you're just sitting there like, damn, I got excited about a player that teams aren't excited about because of who they are. And I hope to God that the teams are wrong, but I already adjusted it. He's 13th on my big board, dropping him 3 or 4 overall points just because of that. So it's unfortunate, but if you do have those legitimate concerns, it is valid to drop them, because the locker room is a very legitimate thing. And if you're coming into the league with some big questions, there's certainly going to be it probably doesn't get much better the moment money starts coming into the equation, and then you're in the middle of a game and it's not going to be as easy as it was maybe at Tennessee, where you're the number 1 guy and you're kind of more of the bottom of the barrel fish. So we'll see what happens. I think he'd actually work really well in Philadelphia. There's a good chance he could be there, and there's probably a good chance that you know, the Eagles are willing to take a swing on a player because, well, they have a locker room full of dudes who, well, I guess BG's not there, but I feel like they have enough veteranship and good leadership with Vic Fangio to make the most out of James Pierce. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. Love you. See you on the far side. Peace.